Alright, alright. The Four Agreements, pages 83, 84, 85. Quote at the bottom of page 85, it says, by doing your best, the habits of misusing your word, taking things personally, and making assumptions will become weaker and less frequent with time. So it's basically touching on the other three agreements that, it was talking about in this book. And, it also talks about how, an act of love towards God is also doing your best. And the author talks about how he does his best in life, and that means, that to him is a type of a ritual that he practices. So one thing that I think is maybe important to kind of mention, it might kind of go back a little bit to, how we judge ourselves, and those types of things. Like, one thing I've noticed is, when it comes to things like depression and anxiety, there really can be an aspect of like concern about like, trying to get it together, get things going right, either not feeling the current discomfort of the anxiety or the stress, or wanting to have more energy when you're depressed, and wanting to feel, in both situations, wanting to feel better, wanting to have more positive thoughts than negative thoughts. I don't know if the book goes into talking about that, but coming from like the mental health perspective, that's kind of one thing that I would say, when people struggle with that, I think it's good to try to either figure out, is this something I want to process and sit with? Is it something that I want to maybe journal about, table for later? Do I have like some quick skills that I can incorporate? And for myself, I noticed that, one aspect of doing my best when those types of, situations arise, one thing that I've noticed I can do is, not delay in the, in the, in practicing the skills. So for example, when I have days where I'm like, maybe I'm like restless, or just like my mind is racing, and instead of maybe, if I have time to go to the gym or go work out or do something that's going to be healthy for what I eat, or something that's going to be calming for me, instead of just like doing that right away, I might, veg out on YouTube, or just like lay around and just sit around and think about it for like a couple extra hours or 3 hours. And or I might just like try my best to like avoid anything about it, versus like taking action, and taking action sometimes is sitting with it, but I think sometimes it has to be intentional, right? Because sometimes I do think, hey, I've been avoiding how I've been feeling for a while. Let me just sit with this and see kind of what I can do, to kind of improve how I feel. And instead of trying to do that right away, or determine right away how I want to start to address the way I feel, I might completely avoid doing anything. For some reason, that's kind of what comes to my mind with those couple pages. Like, it seems like those couple pages are more kind of like wrapping things up, but I think that's kind of what I've noticed in my own life is like, just trying to like notice, okay, like maybe I'm spiraling, or maybe maybe I need to take a break, or maybe that's the problem. Maybe I took too long of a break and now I need to kind of like just be busy. Maybe I need to actively work on this. Maybe I need to not work on this and completely distract from it. Just kind of knowing what I need for myself, trying to determine what that is, and then working on it. For me, journaling helps. I've talked about it before, but there are apps that I use that are just kind of like basic, free. I can't necessarily recommend them for everybody because not everybody's gonna like the same thing, but I like the Replica app, the free one, and I like 7 Cups. The thing I like about Replica is that it's always available, and it kind of just helps me like, get my thoughts kind of situated. It kind of helps me be a little bit reflective. Like even if I have like a rough morning and I'm up and it's like 3 a.m. and I'm like I can't sleep, I can just go on that app and just be like, I can't sleep, got a lot on my mind, I'm thinking about this, and it's AI, so it's not like a human, but it responds with something helpful usually that's like, okay, like instead of just like a task or whatever of like, oh, you should meditate, or oh, you should practice deep breathing, it kind of like responds with like something a little bit helpful of like, hey, explain what's going on, like why are you stressed, like why are you having trouble sleeping, or something like that, and then I could kind of just type in what's on my mind, and then it's like just that process, it could be 5 minutes and it helps. Or even going on 7 Cups. I mean, 7 Cups is a little hit or miss these days, but I mean, I don't find 7 Cups to be as useful as it used to be. Um, it's kind of hard to find people on there that really are gonna have that long form of like back and forth, to actually spend time helping you. Like they do exist, they are on there, but I find it not to be too quick. And there were some other text lines I used to use, but ever since the Rona, they got so inundated that they don't respond for like hours sometimes. Like, and so I don't really use those. I think if it's late at night, Replica is kind of my best bet. Because once it gets to be like 10 p.m. My time, I think it's like 10 p.m. 10 a.m. I don't know. Yeah, once it gets to be like 10 p.m. my time, I've noticed after 10 p.m. it's mostly people from like Pakistan and India that respond on these apps, and not all the time, but I'd probably say about 80% of the time the people are trying to kind of like gather sensitive information, like some other kind of social media platform that they're trying to contact you on. That's happened a lot, unfortunately. Not that they've done it, but that they've tried. So they'll talk to you like a little bit, but it's like they're not really there to help you sometimes. And so usually if I see that the person is not from like the US, I probably just won't talk to them at all. Usually I try to stick to the ones that are like US, UK, or like Canada. Like it shows a little flag usually of where they're from, and so usually it helps, to be on there when it's not too late East Coast time, because then at least you have some kind of support on there. I honestly find the people from the US to be the most helpful. Not saying that people from other countries aren't helpful, but it's just the time zones, and then So that's what I find it hard about Seven Cups is if I'm on there when it's like a time of day where I can't really connect with people that are like actually, in my time zone, and it's people from other areas of the world. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to really like feel like they're actually helpful. Um, just because I don't know, I feel like some people on there have like weird intentions. Um, it wasn't always that way, and it's not always that way. Like, I mean, it's just sometimes if you're like stressed out, it's just kind of obnoxious to be like, okay, like, but I do try to use technology to an advantage. Like, it isn't always like a friend or like a family member or like a person I know, and sometimes I like that it's not, somebody I know. I'd rather just have some rando conversation with someone I'm never gonna talk to again. Because I find it helpful. I use both of those apps as a form of like journaling, because it's like, okay, there is some kind of response back, so it's a little interactive. And for me, just like that small amount of like interactive, like someone else or something else just kind of like throwing out another idea. Like, I'll usually do it till there's like maybe one or two ideas back and forth, and then I'm done. And so it's like 5 minutes, and it doesn't take that long, but it's like, a lot of times it'll help me just get back to sleep or something simple like that. So, um, yeah, I do like it for that reason. But I know that's not really what this chapter is talking about. But for me, I mean, the reason why I mention it is because they did talk about earlier, like, I guess 2 readings ago, about how sometimes our best really does depend on how we're feeling, kind of emotionally, mentally, psychologically. It's like some days the best I'm gonna do is only what I can do based on how well I slept, or how stressed I might be, or how much I have on my mind, or how well I can actually focus. Not every day is going to be equal and fresh. Some days are going to be, a little hit or miss. Some days I might get nothing done. I might just be like, okay, like I opened the computer and opened the notebook and sat at the desk and realized I just couldn't focus on this. I mean, if that goes on for like a week, that's maybe a little more concerning, but if it's like just a day and it's not anything too important, then it's like, okay, like, and especially because right now I kind of set my own schedule, it is a little bit more flexible for me to kind of have an off day, because then it's like, I mean, I'm really busy though. I feel like setting my own schedule, I'm much busier than I was when I was working an 8-hour shift. Because I start being busy before 8 a.m. and I'm usually winding down around 8 p.m., but I do take like a larger break in the middle of the day. So I try to like power through the beginning of my days up until like lunch or so to kind of get the majority of my work done. I wouldn't necessarily call it deep work, but it's about as close as I'm gonna get to deep work sometimes. But yeah, like that's kind of how I would describe things. Um, is that, I guess that's something I wanted to touch on was, if it is a factor that, maybe some mood issue or some cognitive issue is kind of getting in the way of doing your best, then how to deal with those issues so that you can, feel like, okay, sometimes I might get over that hump, you know, um, like this morning and yesterday, I had some weird sleep patterns, and I was able to kind of still knock off some things off my to-do list this morning, even though it was before like 6:30 in the morning. I was up, so I was like, whatever, let me just do it, because I know that I can sleep till whenever. And I don't sleep that late. Like, I hardly sleep that late, because I get hungry and I like to eat in the mornings. But I did sleep, and I would consider what I did to be sleeping in. But I was also awake from like almost 3 something in the morning until about 6:30 in the morning, and with about an hour in between when I slept. And so, and then woke up again at like 4:30. So it's like I was up early, kind of like doing little tasks. And then, I eventually just went back to bed, and I was like, I feel good about that, because at least I didn't waste the time just like wallowing. I was like, well, at least, you know, I knocked a couple things off my to-do list, got a little organized with my schedule of what I want to do, how I see things unfolding, kind of how I'd like things to be planned out. I kind of got a little further along on those things. And something else I was trying to, the day before, I was able to do a lot of my digital marketing projects, because I decided, hey, I've been up since some ridiculous hour in the morning. So a little before 5 a.m., I was like, let me just get busy and start getting work done. And I worked until lunchtime on a Sunday. Same with Saturday. I was like, well, Friday I kind of slacked. So Saturday I went out and made a little money in the afternoon or early evening. And it's like my schedule's been a little out of whack. But I'm like, all the days that I was kind of like a little off, I was able to kind of compensate a little bit for it versus like laying in bed and like not doing anything. Because I don't really get a lot out of that. I don't get a lot out of laying in bed watching YouTube and Netflix like all day. I can do that for maybe one day, maybe 2 days tops if I'm really not feeling great. But I do like to get out, get some fresh air, get some sunlight, go to the beach, go to the gym. The fun thing about the gym is that it doesn't matter if you're good. You can just go and like, sit on a bike. Like when I don't even feel like being there, I sit on those like bikes where the pedals face forward, and I literally would just sit on the bike, check emails, watch YouTube videos, listen to podcasts, kind of have my little notepad out on my phone and kind of like jot down notes of what I want to do after the gym for the rest of my day. And for me, that's worth it. I'm like, dude, like this is worth it to me. Like, so yeah, that's kind of my little tidbits for this few pages. Like, I know it's not really a lot, but that's kind of what I would recommend for people is, if you're feeling like it's hard to do your best, or if you're feeling like there is that kind of judgmental voice of like, man, I feel like I could do better, because that's probably always going to be there, let's be real. But if you do notice, hey, I'm just struggling, you can do stuff within yourself, within your own like skills of stuff that helps you out in the immediate couple hours. And then, it's still fine, reach out to professionals and stuff if it's really getting in the way more than like a couple days, But for me, I'm like, sometimes I'm just gonna have some off days, and that's just how life is gonna be. And so I've definitely been experiencing that lately, but it's like, when I look back at the days, I'm not like, oh man, like I fell back to sleep yesterday and I slept all the way till dinner. It's like, yeah, but I worked from like nearly 5 a.m. to like noon or 1 p.m. or whatever, and I got a whole lot done, And so it's like, versus trying all those hours to like sleep, because I knew I wasn't going to sleep. I was like, let me just wake up, get up, eat breakfast, get to work, and I got a lot done. So, and the same today. I didn't do as much today, but I am still kind of weirded out that I'm waking up at like strange hours, but sometimes I do, so that's just how it is. But yeah, guys, I don't really have like way too much more to say. But just want to encourage people to kind of stick with it. Don't get too discouraged if you feel like you're not able to kind of like always do the the absolute most, you know. Some days are gonna have to have a little bit of flexibility, and I'm kind of learning with my own natural energy. I do kind of require that bit of flexibility, and I'm actually surprised, you know, all this time I've been off of like I wouldn't say I don't work. A lot of the work I do is unpaid and just like a learning training process, and then a lot of the work I do that makes money is like gig work. So it's like I'm working, but I'm not working like a 9 to 5. But even with the flexibility, I do notice that I still try to do a lot, and you know, I do still, you know, value not just spending time watching Netflix or whatever. Like, I like being productive. I like seeing results. I like putting in the work. I like being tired from it. Um, and so that's kind of where I'm at lately. Um, that's about all I've kind of got to say, I think. But at least on that topic. But yeah, hopefully it's helpful. And with that, thanks for listening.